Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. It's National Magic Day, Tone. You have a favorite magic trick?
I'm Tony Kornheiser. I once made my hair disappear. Too much magic. Too much magic.
We need photos to measure who had the biggest afro in, say, 1971. You?
I did.
Or
I
me?
did. No, I definitely did. There's no question about that.
See,
After
people
that,
think we're
by
making this up. We're not making this up. It's
By
true.
1981, I didn't have anything, but 71, I did. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, the U.S. Open is not as scary as predicted. Connor McDavid calls tonight's game, quote, pivotal. And Taylor Twellman joins us to talk about the state of the men's national soccer team. But we begin today with the Indiana Pacers getting 49 points from their bench and outscoring Oklahoma City 32-18 in the fourth quarter to win last night 116-107 and take a 2-1 lead in the NBA Finals. Tyrese Halliburton, who was pretty much shut down in Game 2, had 22 points, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds in Game 3. Wilbon, how do you make sense of what happened last night?
I made sense of it before it happened. I thought that the Pacers were going to win and said so yesterday, and I think that the Pacers have been undervalued all season. And the person I want to give credit to most of all for calling this out and saying this repeatedly is our dear friend Brian Windhorst, who started saying in March and then has said repeatedly, hey, they're a contender hiding in plain sight because they got off to a bad start and they don't have that incandescent star. Well, maybe they do in Halliburton, but he is not on the same page yet in consideration and perception as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But, Tony, they're a complete team. The T.J. McConnell clip we showed at the start, it just completely speaks to who Indiana is. And I'm just going to mention a couple of people here in addition to Halliburton with his 22, 11, and 9. And you got to start there because when he's great, they win. But also Ben Mathurin, Tony, who a lot of teams passed up. Ben Mathurin, yet another one of the young Canadian stars in the world, 27 points. He comes off the bench. Yeah. I'm familiar with him and follow him because he went to school here in Arizona. And they got guys that come at you in waves just like OKC. And Rick Carlisle knows how to employ them brilliantly. So this is not a surprise to me.
Right. So let me say I got this one completely wrong. You got this one completely right, including saying yesterday that Halliburton would have a good game because, as we know, when he scores more than 20 points, they win almost all the time. I thought, honestly, Mike, that Oklahoma City, after losing Game 1, was going to win 4 games in a row. I believe that. Now I'm not sure that they are going to win the series at all. I'm just going through my notes here. These teams, they use their bench a lot. They're not the Knicks. But when you get 49 points from your bench, that's an almost incredible number, particularly against the best defensive team in the league. You look at this, Mathurin, as you said, had 27. Mike, there's only 2 players in the history of the NBA who came off the bench in a game in the finals and had more points than that. And you mentioned McConnell. McConnell had a tremendous line, an impactful line last night. He had 10 points, 5 assists, and 5 steals in 15 minutes. And I know the tendency for you is to say 5, 5, 5, 5, and 5.
No,
he changed the game when he was in there. You know, I'm still sitting here thinking that Oklahoma City will win, but not if they lose Game 4, they're not going to win. It's just that simple. They're not going to win.
I might disagree with you only in this. I think Indiana's going to win Game 4. I'm not saying that decides the series for me. But, man, you talk about an enormous Game 4 tomorrow night in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Woo! Let's move to the first round of the United States Open, still in progress, of course. Oakmont is supposed to punish the players, but several, in the morning at least, finished under par, including J.J. Spaun at -4. Rory shot -2 on his front, but blew up, Tone, +6 on the back. So how do you feel about how the course is playing and about the early results?
Well, I mean, I don't want to make a judgment on the course if a bunch of people are under par today, because what they'll do at Oakmont if a bunch of people are under par today is they'll change the pins tomorrow to such a degree that you're not going to be able to get close to them, and everybody's going to be over par. We understand how that works. Spaun is interesting to me. I watched for hours this morning. Spaun is interesting to me because a lot of people don't know who he is, but he's having a very good year. He lost in a playoff to Rory at the Players. He's been around the top. I think I'm right in this. He's got the 6th highest ranking in the FedEx Cup standing. So do I think he's going to win? No. I mean, I never think people who win, go fairly low the first day are going to win, but he's been around for a while. There are 2 names that finished one name that finished this morning and one name still out there. I've never heard of these people. I have never heard of Thurston Lawrence. I've heard of Thurston Howell from Gilligan's Island. I haven't heard of Thurston Lawrence. Don't know who he is. I never heard of Nygaard Peterson. I don't know who they are. What I watched for and what I think a lot of people watched for, but I don't know them. What a lot of people watch for is the names that you come to the table with. Scheffler, who was minus for a while and then went plus for a while. Rory was -2. Bogeyed 6 holes. One of the bogey holes he needed a 30-foot putt to bogey the hole. DeChambeau is in the plus. Schauffele is in the plus. They're not out of it. Of course they're not out of it. And I've enjoyed watching.
I did too. I started watching at some ungodly hour out here in the Pacific time zone. I was watching it like a Kornheiser, like 5 a.m. time. And that's the only time I'm going to get up that early is to either catch a flight or watch golf like this. Tony Spawn, I'm curious about him because he lost the Players in a playoff, right?
Yeah, but he was in a playoff.
And he was in a playoff, yeah. But, he
had no bogeys.
This is the first competitive round he's ever played at Oakmont. He, never seen the joint. And maybe ignorance is bliss. Maybe all of this, oh, my God, the course is going to kill you. Maybe he just stepped out there and went, what? No.
Have you played Oakmont?
I've driven past.
Okay.
I've driven through it.
Okay. Right, everybody drives started on the 8th hole. You see over my right shoulder, that's an Oakmont flag. I played it once. I'm a 20. I should not be allowed on that course. No, I shot 150. No, it's too hard. Let's move to hockey. The Edmonton Oilers are once again in Florida where they got drilled 6-1 in Game 3. Connor McDavid is calling tonight's Game 4, quote, pivotal. Wilbon, you've been back in Edmonton all year. What are you calling this game?
Pivotal. Mandatory. You're going to win the champ. If you're going to be champions, and it's not even the game number, okay? If this was Game 2, if it was Game 3, if it was Game 5, you can't play like slobs, which is what the Edmonton Oilers did in Game 3, and now they've lost back-to-back games, 2 and 3. But 2 wasn't an embarrassment. It was an overtime loss. It's one of those great Stanley Cup Finals games. Game 3, they played like slobs. All right, there's no other way. We're not going to soft pedal this. So they need to respond. And I'm not just talking about Skinner, who will apparently start in goal after being pulled from Game 3, which is exactly what should have happened. He's back in goal. He's a pro. He's got them this far. McDavid, Draisaitl, but not just them. They lead the way. Nurse, Kane. I don't want to see slob play from the Edmonton Oilers tonight. If you're going to be champs tonight.
There are questions about Skinner, obviously. There are no questions on the other side because the other side is Bobrovsky, who everybody has as one of the top goalies in the game. And he's got something Skinner doesn't have, which is a Stanley Cup ring from last year. But I was told today that Skinner is called the king of Game 4, that in Game 4s in his life, he is 6-0. So they're going to need that. Is it pivotal? They lost Game 3. Everybody who loses a game in the playoffs thinks the next game is probably pivotal unless it's a 3-0 situation. I'm sure Oklahoma City looks at Game 4 against Indiana and thinks it's pivotal. This is the great joy of the NFL playoffs. Every game is pivotal because it's a best of one. It's not best of 3. It's best of 1. Mike, they were down 3-0 last year, and they came back to force a Game 7. So I don't know that 3-1 is necessarily the worst position that they could be in. But, I think what you take away from this is Florida, as Edmonton, is a really worthy team and even more experienced in the Stanley Cup final, don't you think?
Tony, the championship ring validates you and to yourself. But you cannot have those stupid penalties Edmonton have. You cannot just be sort of lazy on the forecheck. They know all the stuff they were pathetic at in Game 3. They better get it changed.
They have a short history in this Stanley Cup and last year's They don't score. Edmonton doesn't score a lot in Florida. They don't. Let's take a break. Coming up, what's the appropriate level of concern over the men's national soccer team? We're going to ask Taylor Twellman.
We'll also ask him whether Christian Pulisic is right. The critics who question his commitment to Team USA are way out of line.
You got to play Oakmont. You got to get ready for a triple-digit score.
I've been invited. I've been invited.
You got to go.
Pardon.
The U.S. men's soccer team appears to be a mess. And to help us sort out what's happening is our friend, the lead analyst for MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, Mr. Taylor Twellman. Taylor, we'll start with this. The team has now lost 4 straight home games for the first time since 1988. That's like almost 40 years ago, 1988. The Gold Cup starts Sunday. The World Cup is a year away. What is the appropriate level of concern right now?
I'm not going to say panic, but I'm teetering on panic. And the reason why is I think you two gentlemen will know this better than anyone, is that a lot can happen in sports in a year, let alone 6 months. And so a year from now is when the World Cup will kick off in 16 cities, 3 countries. That's why I'm not going to panic. However, if you would have asked me that question last summer, you asked me that question 3 summers ago, I would have said unequivocally the United States men's national team would not be in the predicament that they're in, where they're bombing out of Copa America, the fact that they're losing home games 4 in a row, they've lost to Panama, Canada. I can go up and down the list, and we're even questioning whether or not the star player wants to play for him. I'm not panicked, but I am very, very concerned in this present moment.
Well, that's a good launching point to sort of scale this down a little bit to Christian Pulisic, who is at the center of all this discussion, of course. He told the Call It What You Want podcast this morning that critics who question his commitment to the U.S. national team are way out of line. Taylor, where you come down on all this stuff with Mr. Pulisic?
I agree with him, Wilbon. I do. And listen, I was there for his debut. I've been there from the beginning of his international career. Every single time he has stepped on the field, he has bled red, white, and blue. I've never questioned the commitment. However, I'm questioning the collective commitment on whether or not they fully understand the magnitude of what this World Cup is. And I got to raise my hand and apologize to every single one of your watchers and listeners on ESPN right now. I called this team the Golden Generation. I did. That's my fault, because I don't know if they are. They don't have a signature win, and yet they're going into the biggest World Cup in the history of the game, and it's in their backyard. And you guys on PTI are asking me whether or not the captain is committed. That is as a big of a distraction as there is. But to directly answer your question, unequivocally, he's committed to the United States and he wants to play for the United States. I just know, I don't know collectively if they're good enough to do it.
Well, let's bring Mauricio Pochettino into this, because he had to know when he took this gig, there'd be very few chances to sort of put all this together before World Cup. And now we're in this position. What do you think of his approach, his influence so far in this whole process?
It's a D- if I had to give him a grade. And the only reason why it's not an F is because exactly what you just said, Wilbon. He hasn't had a ton of time to acclimate to the international game. But this is a club manager. And this is a club manager that's now trying to get into this situation where you're not with them every single day. It is very disappointing to me how inaccurate he is in assessing what is live on the field and what is in action. The fact that they lose to Switzerland 4-0 at home, and until halftime, that team didn't even look like they had any idea on what they wanted to do. It's a D-. For lack of a better way to put it, it is a D-, and he knows it because he took the onus on it. Pressure's on him. For as dignified as a manager that he is, I am shocked at how disappointing he's been in trying to identify the personality of the group, for a lack of a better way to put it. There's no personality, there's no identity, and the fact is they are up against it and trying to figure that out in over 364 days here.
So I'll get you out of here on this. I'll keep the World Cup in abeyance, because that is, as you've said before, a year away. But the Gold Cup is a couple of days away, and we had the story the other day that the roster wasn't complete, you know, with the American stars and people were staying away. Given all of that, and now the spotlight on this team, what constitutes success for the United States in the Gold Cup?
Tony, great question. 2021, Greg Berhalter did the exact same thing going into the Gold Cup before they went into World Cup qualifying for the 22 World Cup. They lost 3-0 to Venezuela. They ended up winning that Gold Cup. I know things look dire, but they have to get to the final. And if you don't get to the final, then you can re-ask me your first question, and I'm going to tell you I'm a little panicked. I don't care if this is the B team. I don't care if this is the C team. If you consider yourself a real quote-unquote contender in the World Cup in a year, then unequivocally, I don't care who's on the roster, you've got to get to the Gold Cup final, and then you can assess who you play, if it's Mexico or Canada, whoever it may be. But Tony, call me if they're not in the final, because then it's a disappointment.
Thank you, Taylor. So good to have you back.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, man.
Good seeing you, boys.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, another team rejects the Knicks' request for permission to talk to their coach. Of course they do.
Goodness.
Of course they
another
do.
day, another no. And could Jets goalie Connor Hellebuck win both the Vezina and Hart trophies tonight? Why hasn't the NHL given out these awards before now? What are they waiting on?
So I love having Taylor Twellman on the show.
Great.
I know nothing
Great.
about soccer,
To
but
the
you
point,
are
baby.
Mr. Soccer for this show. You are Mr.
Taylor
Soccer.
gets.
Pardon the Interruption is brought to you by Popeyes. Love that chicken from Popeyes.
Send us some Popeyes. I like that. Happy time, people. Happy 84th birthday, Marv Albert. Growing up in New York, I listened to Marv called Knicks games and Rangers games. Kids throughout the New York area would imitate Marv's signature yes call that he used in basketball games. Marv's two brothers, Al and Steve, were play-by-play guys too. Marv's son Kenny is calling the Stanley Cup Final on TNT and does play-by-play on NFL games. Marv did New York Giants football games on radio. He did Monday Night Football and Super Bowls on radio. Did the NBA games on TNT for a million years, and then he retired at 80. Well, but I think I'll call Marv tonight just to hear his voice.
That is such a flex. It was so cool when cable sports on television expanded, jumped, and you could hear Marv. He didn't just belong in New York anymore. The rest of us got to hear Marv Albert. It was so cool, and still is.
Yeah. Happy anniversary, Dirk Nowitzki. On this day 14 years ago, Nowitzki was named Finals MVP as the Dallas Mavericks closed out the Miami Heat 105-95 in Game 6 for the only title in franchise history. In that series, Nowitzki averaged 26 points and almost 10 rebounds a game. Nowitzki's relationship with the Mavericks has been talked about recently because he wasn't seen much at games since the general manager traded away Luka Doncic, who Nowitzki is close to. But Nowitzki sounded optimistic about Dallas winning the draft lottery, and he has attended WNBA Dallas Wings games and has been complimentary of Paige Beckers.
Way back in like the early 90s, the first time I heard Dirk Nowitzki's name, Charles Barkley's in Europe, I think on a Nike junket. He comes back and he says, hey, boy, there's this big German. He's like 14. He's going to be great. I'm trying to bribe him to go to Auburn. And you're like, Charles, what are you talking about? Big German who's 14? It was Dirk. Charles got it right. And Dirk, you want to talk about the coolest guy in the world? Dirk's on the short list. He is.
Happy trails to another coaching possibility for the New York Knicks. Casey Johnson reports that the Bulls have denied the Knicks permission to talk to Billy Donovan. So add Donovan to a list of employed coaches the Knicks wanted to talk to but can't. And that includes Jason Kidd of the Mavericks, Ime Udoka of the Rockets, Chris Finch of the Timberwolves, and Quinn Snyder of the Hawks. Ian Begley of Sportsnet New York reports that this is all part of the Knicks' plan to see who might be available. Of course, it also could be evidence of no real plan at all.
Yeah, I'll just say amen to that, Tony, and also mention something that really was disturbing for a lot of us. David Greenwood, the great former UCLA star who was drafted by the Chicago Bulls when we didn't win the coin flip and get Irvin Magic Johnson, passed away at 68 years old. But David Greenwood was a pro. And then the Bulls traded him for George Gervin. He only played 1 year with Michael Jordan in Chicago. David Greenwood passing at 68 is just tremendously sad.
Too young. A couple of corrections, and they are both Wilbons, of course. Only 5 teams passed on Benedict Mathurin as he was drafted 6th And people from Denmark, Mike, are called Danes, not Denmarks. Let's go to the big finish if we could.
You listening to?
Okay. Former Bengals linebacker Jermaine Pratt signed a one-year deal with the Raiders. Okay by you?
$4.5 million for a guy who led the Bengals in tackles last season? Yeah. The Bengals' top draft pick, defensive end Shamar Stewart, has left mandatory minicamp due to unusual requests in his contract talks that could impact his guaranteed money. Your thoughts?
Everybody on the Bengals defense, and it was terrible last year, they're walking away. The good ones are walking away. The rookies walking away. Agent Wilson left the Aces lost to the Sparks with a head injury. Your reaction?
Gets struck in the face, and I hope this is not serious or a concussion. Don't need to lose Asia Wilson for any time ever. Tigers rookie starter Jason Jobe will have season-ending Tommy John. That's a big loss, isn't it?
Yeah, Jackson, 4-1, big loss. It's a plague, Tommy John. Last one, NHL award show is tonight at 6 Eastern. You're intrigued, aren't you?
No, I'd have been intrigued a month ago. 2 months ago, when the NHL and NBA stopped screwing around with the marketing people and announced these things when they're voted on. Stop it.
I love Wilbon. We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, knucklehead.
And Mike, with tonight's PTI bonus topic.
All right, Wilbon, what's your reaction to rookie Shamar Stewart leaving Bengals minicamp?
Shake my head. Oh, my goodness. Are we going back in time with the Cincinnati Bengals, a franchise who for about 30 years actually had the team practice, their daily practice, okay, underneath an expressway? I know because I was there. You couldn't believe how the Bengals operated and were accused openly of being cheap and miserly and penny pinching, and they seem to get past this. And the Joe Burrow era, they just went out and spent a bunch of money because Burrow essentially made them with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And you got to keep them together. But then, Tony, on the other hand, in short order, they don't get Hendrickson signed or they don't keep him. He is signed. He's a holdout right now. Their rookie, prize defensive player Stewart, holdout, and they're asking him to do things that nobody ever asked a player, and I wouldn't let him do if I was an agent. And Jermaine Pratt, they get rid of him, and the Raiders snatch him up the next day. So what are we doing if you're the Bengals? It's like they're going back to 1980 under a bridge for practice every day.
Yeah, now my sense of this is, this is not 7-on-7, and it's not flag football. You need a defense, and you need an offense. I love Joe Burrow. I thought he had the greatest college year of all time. And I just love watching him pass. Mike, he threw a 5-touchdown pass game last year and lost it. He threw a 4-touchdown pass game last year and lost it because they don't have any defense. And now they're two of their defensive players, certainly one who was a big star, Hendrickson, he's unhappy, right? Another one just left, signed with another team. And now this rookie is saying, what are you doing imposing sanctions on me that are not imposed on other people in a similar... Yeah, in a similar circumstance, and they seem to be self-destructing. I get it that they gave money to Higgins and Chase. They had to. You want to keep Burrow happy, but there's got to be a way to improve that defense, because if they don't have these players, they're going to score 40 and give up 45. They've done that.
You're not going to make Burrow very happy if you're just losing again and missing the playoffs. Let me just say to wrap it up with this, Tony. We should have a bet, you and I. So who's going to leave his team first? What superstar athlete is going to leave first? Skeens going to leave Pittsburgh, go Barry Bonds on them and go somewhere else? Or Joe Burrow going to wake up and say, I don't want to practice under a bridge like a troll. What are you doing? Get a defense around here. Which one? That's it. We're done. Back to you.